Welcome back, everyone. We are really excited to have you here at our first ever YCore virtual info session. I hope you enjoyed having a chance to get to meet some of the other folks in the room. One of the things that we were really sad to not be able to have in a virtual setting is the opportunity for people to mix and mingle and meet new folks and old folks. So we're trying to recreate as much as we can some of the beautiful things that happen at YCore in-person info sessions. So welcome again. My name is Jess Blackshaw, for those of you I haven't met before, and I am the Executive Director of YCore. I am very excited to be here today and to get to share the excellent work that our winter teams have been doing and get to share a little bit about what our summer project leads are working on and planning for the next few months. A quick note that we will be recording this session, so if you have friends who weren't able to make it, you are welcome to share this out with them. We won't be able to have live closed captioning at the event, but we will be sharing a written summary after the event as well. So one of the things that I love most about the YCore info sessions is getting to see everybody's faces in the audience. I, of course, don't get to see that fully right now. But I'm sad that we haven't gotten to make eye contact in a while now. But I always like to get a sense of who's in the room. So I have you all in gallery view right now. Hopefully some of you do too. Could I get a little wave from folks who are brand new to YCore? Yay, look at all those hands waving. I'm so excited. Can I get a little wave from alums and current fellows who are old hat at YCore? Yay, so many hands. Oh, I'm so excited. It's almost like we're in the room together. So welcome to all of you. We are excited to have you here. And to kick us off tonight, I really want to take a little bit of time to just tell you about who we are at YCore and why we exist. Why is YCore here? Why YCore? Well, the short answer is because there is so much need in our community. We all know this, and we all see and feel this on a regular basis. But living in the Bay Area in particular, it is impossible to ignore the huge inequities and disparities that show up sometimes literally on our doorstep. Living in the Bay Area during COVID-19, these inequities are brought into even sharper relief. And I know that we're all feeling this right now. So what do these disparities and inequities look like? These numbers are a few years old, but many of them still hold true today. And they are really just a hint of what we see out there in our community. We are one of the most unequal regions in the US. We have serious racial and income inequality, and our nonprofits, while they are incredible, consistently report that they can't meet the need that they're seeing in their communities. On top of that, a significant portion of our philanthropic funds go to tackling problems elsewhere in the world. This was all true before this world turned upside down. And right now, we are just starting to get an idea of what the new world and new climate will look like. But even the preliminary numbers that we're having show that so much of this, all of this, is only going to get worse. Communities of color are suffering significantly more than other communities. Low-wage workers are suffering from disease and economic downturn in ways that those of us with higher paying and secure jobs just won't. And in light of the economic uncertainties across the board, philanthropic activity is projected to decrease over the next 6 months to a year. Nonprofits already have incredibly thin financial and staff margins, and a lot of them are going to struggle and perhaps not even survive the next 6 months to a year. Now, these numbers capture the gravity of what's going on, but they don't capture the feeling that accompanies it. Living in a society with such unpredictability and such visible present inequalities can be frustrating, it can cause indignation, and it can cause helplessness. And when I say that, I'm of course talking about the community members who are suffering and who are struggling, but all of those feelings of frustration, indignation, helplessness, that's true for those of us who are a part of this community, but in positions of good fortune. Because the reality is, we all want to be living in a vibrant and thriving society. Especially with all of the need and uncertainty that we see, it can be overwhelming to think about how to have a positive impact right now. That's particularly true for those of us who are earlier in our careers, who are trying to figure out what the resources that we have are and how we might be able to share them. But even as we are unsure about what we have to give and what that might look like in the near term, We are so hungry to do more. Prior to COVID-19, a lot of the folks in our generation, and when I say our generation, I mean young professional, early career, typically the 23 to 35 age range. Research shows that just over half of us were making small donations to nonprofit organizations, which is a great start. And many of those donations were reactions to disasters or crises. Research shows that we tended not to plan out our long-term giving. That said, most of us feel like we report that we are feeling that we are not doing enough. Almost 3/4 of our demographic say that we want to be volunteering more. We want to be doing more to connect with our communities. There's already been some preliminary research around how young people and young professionals are responding to COVID-19, and that continues to be true in all of the data that's being collected. What we're seeing is that all of us are starting to turn to local resources. We're listening to city governments, we're trying to shop locally, support our local communities, and we're turning to peers and family for information on things that we may have in the past turned to things like influencers for. Through all of this, that feeling of wanting to do more continues to exist. We are less sure than ever about the resources at our disposal, but more sure than ever that we want to make a difference. So make a difference. When I say make a difference, what do I mean? That word gets tossed around a lot, and it's not always clear what we're talking about or if we're really talking about anything concrete at all. So I do want to take a moment to explain what we at YCore mean by making a difference. We have 3 main components that we focus on. The first of these is connecting. There are so many incredible organizations and individuals out there that are already doing important work. They are the experts, and they know how we can be of service if we just show up and ask them. We also believe in adding value right away. We don't think that we need to wait to develop a certain skill or to amass a certain amount of wealth. There are so many opportunities to do good with what we have right now. That said, we also have a lot to learn. And at YCore, we believe in building skills and relationships that will enable us to continue supporting and advocating for our communities right now and for the rest of our lives. This is YCore's mission statement. Whoever you are and wherever you find yourself right now, we want to help you be a better partner and advocate for your community and understand how to use the tools that you have at your disposal. A YCore fellowship will help you understand all of the resources that you have: time, money, skills, influence, and you can see how to deploy them alongside community-based organizations. So what does that look like? Our fellowship has 2 main components. The first is a hands-on project with nonprofit partners. Of course, right now, that is virtual hands-on project, but you'll hear from our project leads shortly. They have spent 1 to 2 months working closely with a nonprofit partner to identify a strategically important project. Right now, for almost all of our projects, they're touching on goals and strategies that will help these organizations weather the COVID-19 crisis and ideally thrive when we come out of it. As fellows, you would join these partnerships and these projects and commit 5 hours per week to working with your nonprofit partner. You'll also be attending bi-weekly workshops with YCore staff that focus on both hard skills for your project and some big picture context questions. Things like exploring social justice, exploring your values, exploring how you can stay engaged with the social sector. You'll learn things like design thinking principles, fundraising, and then dig into conversations about the systems that operate in our society. Right now, our workshops are all virtual. We're optimistic that by the end of this cohort, we may be able to meet in person. We might not, but we are excited to get to connect with you via tiny screens. Either way. So what do we ask of you as YCore fellows? We ask you to commit to the basic time requirement of workshops and 5 hours per week. We also ask that you meet a financial commitment that sustains YCore's program. That amount for fellows is $1,500, and we teach a fundraising workshop to support this, so you won't be doing that work alone. We also know that these are financially uncertain times, and we do not want the fundraising requirement to keep you from applying. If this is a concern for you, we will work with you during the application process to figure out what the right amount and strategy is for you. Finally, we ask you to prioritize YCore while you're a member of the fellowship. We are working on projects, but we're also focused on building a community of young professionals and nonprofit professionals that extends beyond the bounds of a single project. That is so important, especially right now, but it does take some extra effort and work. We have actually got some pretty fun plans for how to build a virtual cohort community, but we will need your energy and spark to make the magic happen. And why is that so important to us? It's so important to us because we see YCore as a lifelong journey. Our alumni stay deeply involved with giving and volunteering. After their projects, our alumni are 6 times more likely to donate over $1,000 annually to social causes and 16 times more likely to volunteer at least 5 hours a month. This looks different for everybody. Some of our alumni join junior boards or start a giving circle. Some of them become regular volunteers and donors, and some of them fully transition to the nonprofit sector. But the reality is, no matter what, they stay engaged. And a lot of them stay engaged with YCore. You had a chance to talk to some of our alums at the beginning of this session, but our alumni also join us for events, discussions, giving campaigns, and they keep their relationships alive with each other as friends and as support systems for the work that they're doing. This is so huge for us because we believe that having a positive impact on our community is a lifelong relationship. How we do it grows and changes over time, but the most important thing that we can do is to stay committed to that relationship and to keep doing something at any given moment and surround ourselves with people who will support us in that work. So I do want to share a little bit about what our impact looks like. These are some numbers that we are very proud of. We're still a very young organization, but these numbers only tell a little bit of the story. And I bet these numbers aren't what you came to hear about. So this past cohort, we partnered with these 6 incredible organizations, all of which were excellent projects. I think some of you got to hear a little bit about this work, perhaps in the earlier conversations we had. I'd also really encourage you to check out our website and our Medium page where we'll be putting up profiles on these incredible projects. I know that we aren't all in the room together, but again, could I get a little wave of hands from the current cohort right now, current cohort and partners? Yay, you guys are amazing. We're giving you a virtual round of applause right now. We don't have time to present all of these projects in this session, but I do want to give you a little bit of a sense of what some of the issues that YCore projects take on are, and how YCore fellows can be a part of solutions in our community. So with that in mind, I would love to introduce the panel that we've put together for this evening, which consists of some excellent, wonderful people who I am so honored to have join us. We have Darcy Green from Latinas Contra Cancer, who is an upcoming YCore partner. We have Carrie Kirby from Edgewood Center for Children and Families, who is a partner who is wrapping up a project right now. We have Brandon Shao, who is a project lead currently with YCore, wrapping up his project with the NABE. And our moderator will be Vinamrata Singhal, who is an alum of the program. So I will now turn it over to V so she can ask questions of our wonderful panelists.
Oh, I was muted and now I'm no longer muted. Great. This is classic Zoom issues, but yes. Hi everyone, as Jess mentioned, my name is Vinamrata, and I'm gonna be your moderator for this panel today, where we're gonna talk about how nonprofits in the social sectors are dealing with the current COVID crisis. Before going into our panelists and our discussion topics, I just wanna take a quick second to introduce myself and what I do. So as I mentioned, I'm Vinamrata. I work at a company called Propel. We're a small startup based in Brooklyn, New York, and we specifically focus on building tools for low-income Americans to manage their safety net benefits. And as Jess mentioned, I was a project lead in 2018 and have kind of carried that ethos of really wanting to do something at the intersection of technology and social impact, which is how I ended up at Propel. And the work that we're doing right now, has been really dramatically impacted as a result of the COVID crisis, given the populations that we serve. And so I'm really excited to be here hosting this conversation to understand the impact of COVID on the nonprofit community specifically. So really, really excited to be here. And the way this is going to work is I have a few questions prepared for our panelists today. So I'm going to spend some time going through those. And then we'll leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for audience Q&A. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat box. And with that, I'm going to officially start introducing our panelists. So for our first question, I just want to ask our panelists, just give us a quick overview of what you do, what your involvement with YCore looks like, and a fun question, which is, if you were a vegetable, what kind of vegetable would you be? So I'm going to start off with Brandon, if you can kick us off.
Hey all, I'm Brandon. I'm a data scientist in my day job. I am the project lead for the project with Potrero Hill Neighborhood House. And if I was a vegetable, I guess I would be an eggplant, because, you know, you can kind of, it goes with all the cuisines. You can kind of throw it in anywhere. It's awesome. You know, not to toot my own horn too much, but it's a great vegetable.
Yeah, I think eggplants are pretty yummy too. Cool. So then I'm gonna ask Carrie if you can introduce yourself as well.
Hi everybody, I'm Carrie. I work at Edgewood Center for Children and Families in our advancement department, and I'm currently wrapping up a project with YCore Fellows that was looking at our marketing and branding strategy. And I would be broccoli because it's nice and soft looking on the outside, but really complex and intricate on the inside.
I love that. Broccoli is probably one of my favorite vegetables, so that's really cool. Great. And then Darcy, if you can introduce yourself as well.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Darcy. I'm the PD and CEO over at Latinas Contra Cancer. And if I were a vegetable, you could tell I thought about this ahead of time. If I were a vegetable, I'd be a carrot, because it's like blossoming on the top, but there's so much work and rooting happening at the bottom in the good part. So I think I'd be a carrot.
That's awesome. I love how like deep everyone's answer was. Like, I was like, oh, I just like, you know, potato. So I guess I'm a potato, but potatoes are kind of lumpy. So maybe I don't want to be a potato. Anyways, thank you all for the introductions. I'm going to transition gears and go a little bit into the meat of the panel now. So I'd like to start by Darcy, since you just spoke last. If you can tell us a little bit about how your work and the work that your organization is doing has been impacted by COVID-19.
Yeah, thank you. So our work, we exist to be a sort of a safety net, or a piece of the safety net for the Latino community and communities that are low income or may have traditionally had issues or obstacles in front of them regarding access to the healthcare system. So we exist to serve people who are falling through the cracks already. And the big drastic change for us has really been, prior to the pandemic, our patient navigation had been around helping people access mammograms, helping people access other cancer prevention tests and screening, helping people to sign up for low-income healthcare. It has pretty much exclusively switched over since the beginning of the pandemic from doing all of those regular traditional patient navigation services to now helping those same families and clients, and an increasing number of families and clients every day, access things like food and shelter and emergency rent assistance, or emergency financial assistance for other bills, or helping to prevent homelessness and helping to make sure people are able to feed and shelter their children. So we're seeing the need from our community move from basic healthcare needs to, I can't even prioritize my health. I can't even prioritize my cancer prevention or lowering my risk, because I am worried on a daily basis on how I'm going to feed my family and house my family and how I'm going to get through the pandemic. So that has impacted not our programs, in that thankfully it's something that we're set up to do anyway as an organization, but the type of navigation that people need has changed a lot. In addition to that, the sheltering in place has required us to rethink how we engage with the community and how we utilize things like Zoom and and remote programming and the telephone and scanning apps and those type of things. So like all organizations, we've had to transition our programming over to a virtual remote way of doing things. But because what we do is very essential, we had to make sure that our programming didn't stop.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I'm curious, especially with the latter piece, like, did you find it challenging in terms of getting in terms of the way that your team would traditionally do programming, getting them to pivot into this new virtual way of conducting the programming?
Not for the team, because we're a part-time organization. We're a very small, small but mighty. We're a small group of Latinas who are working at our organization, but we do a lot of work. It wasn't hard to have the team do that because many of us, we all have families, or we're in college, or there's different levels of responsibilities outside of work on our team. So we had already built the infrastructure for people to be able to work from home, or to be able to do some things remotely, just based on the nature and how accommodating we do try to be as a workplace for people who, like myself, are single moms, or like some of our navigators going to college. So we were set up for that. I would say that the challenge was to make sure that the clients we serve we weren't deepening the disparity and inequity they were facing by suddenly trying to throw these programs into one that requires access to the internet, a well-lit and quiet place in your home, a device, a personal device, or a computer. We know that all of those things may not be things that our clients have. So we really had to be thoughtful about how do we prepare our clients to be able to access our programs, like our support groups and other things, and can we set aside the time and capacity to train people who may not be used to using Zoom or apps, so that they could continue accessing support groups and one-on-one counseling, or being able to scan important documents that they would have in the past. So I think it was for our team, but more so for the community. There's a big disparity when it comes to access to technology. And even though we're here in Silicon Valley, there's so many homes that go without access to broadband. So this pandemic has really, I wouldn't say put a light on it, because those of us who work in this, we see it every day, but it's deepened that inequity.
Yeah, I think given some of the work that I've done at Propel, like that, a lot of what you said really resonated. So thank you so much for sharing that. I want to turn it over to Carrie now and ask just the same question, and more like, I'm actually curious, like, based on what Darcy just said, do you see similarities in terms of the answers for how COVID has impacted the work you're doing, or do you see like a completely different picture?
Yes, at Edgewood, we work predominantly with families and children, youth, and families struggling with mental health issues. But they also are facing other social inequities, poverty, food insecurity, housing insecurity. And I would say similarly, Edgewood was not prepared to transition to a virtual platform. Not only did our clients and families experience not having access to hotspots, laptops, devices, our staff don't either. And so much of everything we do and what we think is so special about Edgewood is being in person and being able to connect with vulnerable children and families in San Francisco. We serve about 11,000 kids every year. And so it's a pretty large quantity of folks that we've had difficulty connecting with. And so we've had to, shift our operations and really focus, the first, I would say, 3 weeks of our efforts was just gaining access to devices. And then from there, it was also training, our kinship caregivers who are 65 and older, who have chronic health conditions, how to use the devices, how to get their, 8-year-old grandson to be able to use the device and get to school. And I think our biggest concern is mental health symptoms, are emerging, at a rapid rate right now for people that were already struggling before the pandemic, for our own staff who are fearful. We have about 50 employees reporting to work every day, working with young people who struggle with suicidal thinking. They actually live with us, and so we staff the program 24/7. And our teams are really impacted. They're increasingly stressed, worried about taking COVID-19 home to their families, despite, new screening protocols. And so it feels really heavy. And we're really committed to keeping all of our programs open. So of the 25 that we've temporarily suspended one, but the rest remain in operation. And I think our biggest fear is that when this is over and when shelter in place is lifted and when kids are seen by mandated reporters, again, in schools and after school programs, that things are going to be just really, really difficult.
Yeah, I can't even imagine, and I just want to thank the work that you and your organization are doing, because it just sounds so relevant and so important given everything that's going on right now. I want to switch gears to Brandon and ask, I guess, from a different perspective, since your involvement in the space is more as like a project lead in YCore. What happened with the organization you're working with, as well as with your project as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and how has that been changed as a result of the pandemic?
It hit our project pretty hard, and it hit our partner pretty hard as well. The NABE's mostly on the ground doing stuff. They have an event space where people are coming in. They host a lot of programs for children and for seniors, and a lot of those just had to shut down during this time, and they've had to cut off most of their not only programs, but also their sources of funding. So it's been really hard for them as far as getting funding during this time. And our project was also going to be mostly on the ground, that it involved us interviewing a lot of people from the community, and most of those were needed to be organic, and us going out and meeting people. So we really had to shift our project and pivot into something that was more doable remote. And we've been able to do that. It's been kind of a hard shift. It took us about a month of kind of figuring things out, but we've gotten back. We had to expand the users that we were interviewing, and kind of find people who didn't necessarily live in Potrero Hill, but were relevant or fit the demographic of Potrero Hill that we wanted to look at and speak to. So it took some time, but I think the NABE is also, they are supporting the community in the ways that they can. Their food pantry is still running. They're working with seniors in the community, and they're supporting low-income students and getting them access to computers and the technology that they need to actually go to school right now. So they're still doing great work, but it's been really interesting and difficult transition for them. Luckily, they're still able to pay their staff through government grants right now.
Yeah, and I imagine that as all of this was kind of happening, I mean, I feel like I speak for a lot of people, like both from your personal life and also from like, what's going on like at the work or your company, like a lot of things are being figured out. I guess how did you feel in terms of support from your organization, as not only are you trying to figure out like this project, but also trying to kind of rechange the entire scope of your project as a result of COVID-19, and figuring out like how you're going to do it given all the new constraints?
Yeah, I mean, they've been great to work with. I've really appreciated Ed, who's the executive director over there. He's been amazing to work with, and he's very positive and positive about the changes that are happening. And they're going through much tougher times than I'm personally going through. And so just being able to support them has been the main goal during this time.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. So I want to transition gears to my second question for you all, which is, and this is actually more targeted towards Carrie and Darcy, which is, what role do you think the nonprofit and social sector community should play in the recovery of COVID-19, given the government response? Darcy, do you want to start us off?
Sorry, I muted myself because I'm participating with my 3-year-old son in the far distance, and he's very loud. So um, that question is so interesting because the nonprofit sector always has a role to play in social and economic recovery at any time. I mean, there are certainly, there's been an increased economic and public health crisis. We are in a public health and economic crisis. And the nonprofit sector has been leading the way with filling in the gaps for those who are always falling through the cracks and depend on the safety net year round. So those folks who were depending on the nonprofit safety net to fill in those gaps prior to the pandemic on a daily basis, and those nonprofits that have been working hard to provide mental health services and healthcare services and education services and every possible industry you could think of. There's nonprofits doing the underbelly of the work for the most vulnerable among us. When you take that into account and you throw and layer on top of that a pandemic of this nature that is a public health crisis at the same time it is an economic crisis, there is only the increased need for services. But you'll probably read, if you were to do a quick Google News search and search out increased nonprofit service need and fundraising, you will find that they are going opposite directions. So while the need for nonprofits to come in and continue doing what we always do, and that is to provide that safety net for the most vulnerable among us, and the percentage of vulnerable among us has grown greatly. You look at the unemployment rate and the number of people who have reported having lost hours, or the number of people who have less than $500 in their bank account, that's a staggering number of people. But the nonprofit dollars and fundraising has gone down, particularly for small nonprofits, minority-led nonprofits, or those serving those vulnerable populations. So the reason I said that was an interesting question is because if you then layer on top of that this particular government's response, and how is the nonprofit sector filling in for that gap given this particular government's response? And what I would say to that, as a nonprofit ED that serves primarily Latino populations, low-income populations, and many of our populations that are undocumented and therefore ineligible for federal stimulus packages, ineligible for unemployment in the state of California, ineligible for many other types of dollars that are going to other folks, American citizens who will not get federal stimulus dollars because they are married to someone who is undocumented. Even though our undocumented community pays a very large portion in taxes through TIN numbers, they still, even though they are the backbone of our economy, still will not be receiving federal dollars. So nonprofits like ours that within our population of clients serve those who will not get the benefit of any of this CARES package or any of these federal dollars, yet work these essential jobs that we're calling heroes on the news, but we're not paying a living wage. We are also there. I'll say they're politically, but not politically in a partisan way. I mean political in the sense that all of this is political, the choices that our government makes with dollars. We nonprofits are feeling that and doing advocacy around that for those extremely vulnerable clients that fall into that category. So we're having to make up some of that ground because what should just be the right thing to do based on human rights and human values, this particular government at the high level is choosing not to. But I will say that we have some excellent local government officials who've really stepped up in the absence of national leadership.
Yeah, and I think in some ways that is kind of the theme of this whole pandemic, right? It's like local leadership is unfortunately filling in a lot of gaps for national leadership. So it's a little disheartening, but I guess that's the state of the world.
But hopeful. I mean, it's disheartening, but also I think it's hopeful because it can be overwhelming to think about how huge the scale of the problem is. But when you remember that, as your executive director said in the beginning of this presentation, there are things you can do at a very local and real level. Like there are real things that you all can do as individuals to have a big impact on those who are suffering. And if you bring it down to that scale and remember that as an individual with the hours that you're going to put forward, even in this project you're going to do, there's a real impact you can have for people who are suffering. And when I think about that and scale it down, I am very hopeful.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I guess, Carrie, is there anything that you want to add to that in terms of things that you think the nonprofit and social sector should be involved in as a result of, in terms of the response to this pandemic?
I think what Darcy said, rings true at Edgewood as well. And I think one thing that I feel lucky and blessed by is our engagement in a trauma-informed systems initiative with a group of other community-based organizations across the Bay Area. And we really emphasize 6 what we call trauma-informed principles and try to infuse them into our work. And one of those 6 is resiliency and recovery. And we know that, at the end of the day, we are the backbone that's going to help these families and young vulnerable kids get through it. And so I think being able to look at it from that perspective provides hope and keeps our staff engaged, when times feel really desperate and really isolating.
That makes sense. So I'll transition to my final question for the evening. And I think this, Darcy, you touched on this a little bit, but I'm curious what you think young professionals can specifically do to help if they don't directly work in the nonprofit and social sector, given all of the problems that are now being exacerbated as a result of this COVID-19 pandemic. Darcy, do you want to start us off?
Sure. There's so much y'all can do. There is so much you guys can do. Once upon a time, I was a young professional, and I didn't work in the nonprofit sector. I worked at a very, very big health plan, and for 10 years, actually, I was in my mid-20s to my mid-30s when I worked there before I came over to LCC. And some of the things that you can do, in addition to volunteering, right? Volunteering is always a great thing. We nonprofits can always use volunteers. But I think it's really important for young professionals to consider board service. And I served on my first nonprofit board, I think I was 22. And I've been serving on nonprofit boards ever since. I don't now because I don't have the time, but I've served on many. And the perspective that you all bring to the table as young professionals starting out in your careers, but also the life experience you bring in the particular generation that you are, I think is very valuable to have at board seats. So if you find a cause that is really, doesn't always have to be what you work in either. Sometimes you have hobbies that are maybe outside of what you do in a 9-to-5, but it's a skill set that you've really picked up, or it's something that you do in the 9-to-5. But if you have a skill or knowledge or a wisdom in something, you could share it as a part of a leadership team for a nonprofit. You could also join a committee, and you could also lead a campaign, right? There could be an advocacy campaign that you're really interested in. And some people really enjoy fundraising. I'm not one of those people, but I do it. Because I know it's important. But some of you out there may be brilliant fundraisers and movers and shakers and networkers. And helping a nonprofit fundraise doesn't always mean you need to be the person bringing in the dollars, although that really is important. But sometimes helping a nonprofit fundraise means helping a nonprofit expand their database or expand their network of contacts. And us in the nonprofit sector, we tend to be in the nonprofit sector. So for those of you who are working in your 9-to-5 outside of the nonprofit sector, meeting folks all over in different professional capacities, you may be able to help make these crucial contacts for folks like me who maybe wouldn't be able to get in the door otherwise. So I think really sitting down and saying, what are the issues that make me excited? Healthcare, education, technology, there's tons of them. And then finding the nonprofit that works in that and bringing whatever skill set you have to the table. There's never, you'll only get wiser and smarter and more accomplished, but you're, just as you are now, completely capable and needed in the nonprofit space. So you have already within you the experience and talents that we need. So just reaching out to those ones that you're interested in and learning more about them and thinking about board service or fundraising or volunteering.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think that also resonates really well with my YCore experience in terms of just how many of the things that I was doing in my day-to-day were actually very applicable to the kinds of skill sets that were needed, or just like they just like needed help in these areas. So that definitely resonates. Carrie, is there anything you would like to add to that?
I think that, everything Darcy said is applicable at Edgewood too. And I think for us, right now we're also recognizing that, our volunteers are experiencing stress, our family foundations are experiencing stress. Knowing that you can pick up the phone and give us a call, or if you see somebody in your family struggling, with depression or anxiety, there are ways to get help. And I think, particularly around mental health, there's a significant amount of stigma that we're constantly working through, before COVID-19 and likely, after. And so anything you can do to, help acknowledge what are the 10 warning signs about, mental health, educate yourself. And then when you see something, say something, because the only way we're going to be able to heal is together and in partnership.
Yeah, and I think that message is especially relevant now given all of the mental health problems that are rising because of COVID. So definitely makes a ton of sense. Brandon, I guess for you, I'm a little bit curious, like what your perception was in terms of ways in which you thought the nonprofit sector, in terms of how young professionals could help nonprofit sector before you joined YCore, and if that has actually changed as a result of your experience in YCore.
Yeah, I think it has changed a little bit. I was in the nonprofit sector for a few years, or the NGOs before this, but coming back to America and like seeing what's going on here, especially being in the tech bubble now, I think you forget it is isolating, and going to the NABE and just seeing, okay, the fact that they have these old desktop computers when, people are just like flinging MacBooks at you every day in tech companies, and just realizing, oh, these resources are not being evenly distributed. There's so much inequity in the Bay Area, and that you can see that when you go to a lot of local nonprofits, and just the amount of funding that comes in, the amount of resources that come in, the amount of technology that comes in. They are also competing with these huge tech salaries and affected by the huge tech salaries and the housing crisis and all of these things that are going on here. And just like, I think I've become much more aware of the housing crisis because of this. And I think this is a really good time to think about that, especially as work goes more remote. What does that mean for where we choose to live, and what we choose to do with our money, things like that. So especially during COVID, I think Darcy definitely touched on this just now, but seeing how hard it is for the NABE to raise money right now, because they are not, direct COVID release, even though they're directly serving communities that are inequitably affected by COVID. That people are not going out of their way to support them. And so I think right now this is a great time to remember those nonprofits and organizations that, even though they're not direct COVID relief, they are providing critical services during this time. And if you're donating, think about donating to those sorts of nonprofits as well. And it's just like, it's a time in the world where things are very plastic in a way I don't think I've seen during my lifetime. And that can be a really good thing or a really bad thing. And as we're all in whatever level of isolation we are right now, I think it's a really good time to sit with those feelings and try to emerge, at least personally, on a better side of this. And hopefully that will do something for the overall state of America and the world. So I don't know if that really answered the question. I kind of went down a rabbit hole there, but.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think summarizes a lot of the feelings that maybe I touched upon earlier of like I really liked what you said and kind of like what everyone has said here in terms of like there's a lot of things that and a lot of pain that is exacerbated as a result of this crisis, and I think that there's that pain is very unfortunate, and unfortunately, we don't necessarily have the national leadership that should be addressing this pain in the right way, but we have a lot of really great local leaders, and we have a lot of really great opportunity for people like young professionals like yourselves to really step up and kind of help these nonprofits that are doing some amazing work fill in the gap, whether it's through direct service, whether it's through board service, like what Darcy suggested, or donating, like how Brandon suggested, or even just being more educated, like what Carrie suggested, and kind of like helping each other out and looking out for each other. And so with that, I just want to thank all our panelists for their really amazing contributions. Really, really interesting discussion. And now I want to hand it off to the audience. If you want to ask any questions, please drop them in the chat box and we will answer your questions. Does anyone not have any questions? So it'd be like the
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'm on my flip phone. I cannot enter in anything in the chat box.
No worries. Go ahead. Ask your question.
Is the director of the community center for music there?
So we will have a Q&A for the projects coming up after the plenary session. So right now, if you have questions for the panelists, go ahead and either chat those in or call those out. But we will have an opportunity for you to ask questions about the Community Music Center project at the end.
Oh, well, I don't have any questions, but I do want to say, you know, although it may seem like the government's not having a proper response, I do think the establishment that we have at hand is providing a lot of the people of the nation are responding well to it. So there's a lot of good things happening, a lot of great response, especially in the San Francisco area. You know, Code Tenderloin is a group that I've been finding out more about, and I take classes over there. I see people handing out food on every corner. You know, I see people working a little bit harder to get some of the people out of the tents here in the city. So it's not all doom and gloom as much as, you know, focusing on the negative might seem. We are responding. There are good people in the world. And that's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. I want to transition to some of the questions that have been coming in on the chat box. So the first question is for Darcy and Carrie. What type of volunteer opportunities do your organizations have for people who may not be able to commit to YCore, e.g. one-off volunteer opportunities?
I can start. After we got our feet on the ground, we launched a virtual volunteer program to help with some of the emerging needs that we have. And one of them currently is helping make masks and PPE. As a mental health provider, we are having a really difficult time gaining access to materials that would protect our staff from the virus. And, you know, for good reason, that stuff is going to hospitals. But if you're managing or talking with somebody who has a thought disorder and they're unable to put on their mask because of their mental health symptoms, it's putting a lot of our staff at risk. So if you're a sewer, that's definitely a big thing. And right now we also shifted our food bank and pantry to a drive-through and no contact delivery system. And so, you know, bringing items, basic need items, food to our vulnerable families is always something that we need. And ideally, when we get back to the place where we can all be together again, We offer a lot of really interesting things that we're excited to get back to once it's safe to do so.
Darcy, anything you want to add to that?
Our office isn't open. We have a few navigators there. So our physical office isn't open and we have ongoing volunteer opportunities there. But in the meantime, we're looking for folks, maybe someone who has experience with navigating websites. We are needed. I'll put that plug out there. If any of y'all know how to work on a website, we need some help with that. We also, just lost my earpiece. We've been putting together, so I'll just give you guys like an example. Examples from the work we do, we recently were able to help get a woman placed in a hotel who was homeless and battling cancer while homeless. And so what we were able to do was, after we got her placed, we brought her this really nice bag that had in it a small fragrance-free hand sanitizer, a travel-size fragrance-free lotion, some cozy socks, a nice love and support card from us, and little things to help make her day better. We normally have that in our on-site wig and breast prostheses boutique. We offer wigs and breast prosthetics to women who would normally not be able to access them because they don't have health insurance or because for whatever reason they can't access them. So we're looking for volunteers who want to help us do small little donation drives where we're getting travel size, pampering type of products that we can put in 2 bags to help lift someone's spirits or to show support and love. We also have other types of projects that we're doing virtually, but they're more, I would say, not like you're coming in for a couple hours to volunteer, but more like I have, a month or so that I want to work with a nonprofit. Maybe I have a few hours a week to work on a project. So I would say if you are interested and you care about the issue of healthcare or the type of client base we serve, just to reach out to me. And we have a lot of things that we need, and we could always kind of just pick your brain about what your interests and talents are and how you might fit in.
That makes a ton of sense. Cool. So we have time for one more question, and we have 4 or 3 really great questions. So I'm just going to pick the next one in line, which is, do you have any tips for finding full-time work in the social sector during this time?
Our need is only getting greater. We have continued to hire throughout the entirety of this process. I know that's not the same at all nonprofits, but we've definitely had to think about our onboarding process differently, our background check process differently. So it's a little bit slower. And I think it's also a difficult time to join a team when you don't get to meet anybody. But I would say similarly to Darcy, if you have questions or want to know more, be happy to talk with you offline about specific opportunities and get you in touch with the right program manager on our end.
I have actually seen some of the other organizations that we work with hiring. So I think there are some organizations that are providing what could be considered direct need and are very fully funded. And in fact, adding. I think it just varies. So I think that there are some job opportunities out there, and I would just reach out. And again, if it's an area that you're passionate about, or the mission of the nonprofit is one that you're passionate about, just reaching out to whoever that executive director is, or looking on their board and seeing if there's someone I think boards are always a good way to kind of see who else is involved, but try to make some type of contact and see if they are offering any positions. I don't know exactly where you would go to look up positions for that, but I do know that I've seen nonprofits hiring at this time.
Gotcha. And I'm actually going to squeeze in one last question, and maybe this is more applicable for Brandon, which is, how did you work with your YCore counterpart to determine the right project scope?
Yeah, so as a PL or project lead, we spent about 2 months, I think it was, talking to our partner before actually recruiting people onto the project. So a lot of that was just interviewing them, talking through all of the things. And, we came to the NABE, and they had a list of things that they were interested in doing. So it was more paring it down to something that we could fit into one cohort, rather than like trying to find something to do. There was definitely need. So I think it was just really working with them, going back and forth, scoping things out, writing some documents and sending it back and forth to get to having a solid project plan. We actually had everything scheduled out week by week. And then of course, that all went out the window. But it's just kind of like you'd scope any other project, just taking the time to really figure out what's going on and spend that time planning.
Cool. That makes a ton of sense. Oh yeah, go for it.
I think from Edgewood's perspective, the first question or support that we asked YCore for was to help us grow our bilingual clinician population so that we could provide service in people's first language. And it was actually a problem that unless we really could raise our salary, we just weren't going to be able to do. And so I think for us, it was really great to have, that honest feedback and support around scoping a project that we could achieve given the time constraints. And so I think, as a partner, finding somebody that's transparent and honest with you is, a strength of the things that we experienced at Edgewood.
Yeah, that's definitely, that definitely makes sense and definitely resonates. I want to be conscientious of time and the fact that we have a bunch of other presentations to get to. So just wanted to give a huge thank you to Darcy, Brandon, and Carrie for being our awesome panelists today. Gonna give a virtual clap here, sort of, I guess you can hear it. Feel free to Zoom react with claps as well. And I'm gonna hand it back to Jess, who's gonna take over for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, V, and thank you to all of our panelists. It was really wonderful to hear from you all, and I look forward to getting to see you all in person at some point in the future. For folks who have additional questions, we will share more information at the end, but there will be time for you to ask questions of me and YCore staff. There will also be time for you to ask some more questions of individual project leads for upcoming projects. So stay tuned if you have more questions. Particularly, I saw one around what virtual volunteering will look like for YCore. So please feel free to stick around and ask that question once we reach the end of the presentation portion. But I hope that after that panel and after our description of YCore, you are just feeling all fired up and ready to go. So I want to share a little bit of details about what happens next and how you can get involved. So you've probably heard us bounce these words around a little bit: project lead and project fellow. We sometimes call project leads PLs. So we are recruiting for 2 different roles in YCore. The first is a project lead. So Brandon spoke a little bit about what that looks like. That is somebody who comes on and spends a month or 2 reaching out to nonprofits, having conversations with them, getting to know their needs, and then scoping out a project that they will execute over a 4-month period. So that starts in July, the scoping period lasts through August, and then the project would kick off in September and run through the end of the year. This is a great role if you are really excited about building a strong relationship with a nonprofit, if you really want to lead a team, if you really want to dig into that sort of leadership and owning the project role. The project fellow role are the folks who are joining existing projects that have been scoped out. So this is a little bit of a shorter time frame, but it'll kick off in June and run through October. This is a fantastic role if you are really wanting to learn more about a nonprofit sector or a project. This is a great role if you are just excited about some of the projects that we'll share shortly and some of the nonprofits that we're going to talk about, because they are absolutely fantastic organizations. We're recruiting for both of these roles in San Francisco and in the Peninsula, so across all locations. I mentioned our summer projects. We are working with 10 incredible organizations in San Francisco this summer. We are so excited to have all of these projects get off the ground. These are a lot of nonprofits that we have supported before and are absolutely thrilled to support. to share a little bit about these organizations. We have a very short video with little pitches from our project leads. So you'll get a chance to see their faces and hear a little bit about what they are going to be working on. And as I mentioned earlier, we will share information. There will be a Q&A with all of these folks after. So keep a note of which project leads get you really excited. And then we'll share with you how to speak with them after the video.
Hey everyone, my name is Nick Kikuchi, and I'm super excited to be a project lead for YCore Summer 2020 cohort. Professionally, I'm a project manager in Roche Genentech's external manufacturing group. And a fun fact, I'm actually an ordained minister, and I was lucky enough to have wed my sister and her husband last October. This cycle I'll be pairing with the Japanese Cultural and Community Center of Northern California, or JCCCNC. And in terms of fellows, what I'm looking for are those who can be really empathetic towards the Japanese American community, especially during these times of COVID-19. In terms of specific skills, if you have any experience with PR, marketing, or creative writing, that'd be fantastic, as well as anyone with any interests or hobbies in photography. Other than that, I'm really looking for people who can bring a lot of passion and excitement to the team. Thanks everyone, and I can't wait to meet you all.
I'm Gabriella, a product manager at Lyft. Fun fact, I love tea and have more than 30 kinds at home. For this project, I'll be working at Glide, which is a social service and social justice nonprofit working on the streets of San Francisco, and we'll be helping them think about how they can expand their offering to better meet the needs of families, especially single mothers of color. And we're really hoping for people with strategy and modeling experience. Hope you can join.
Hi everyone, my name is Shay and I'm excited to be one of the project leads for the summer's upcoming YCore cohort. I currently work in the office of the CFO at Alphabet, and my fun fact is that I'm a mango farmer. I will be working with a partner called MoneyThink. They're a national financial literacy and college success org that's based here in SF. And I'm excited to partner with them because we'll be helping them with the launch of their new financial aid app. Things that I'm looking for in fellows, good energy, fun and can-do attitude, and overall commitment to the project and the cause itself. Would be helpful to have people with some form of digital marketing background, graphic design skills, and someone who knows a thing or two about monetization. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Katie and I'm one of YCore's program managers. I'm here to tell you about a project with Access Dance Company, an Oakland-based nonprofit organization that aims to make dance education more accessible for people of all ages with or without disabilities. We'll be partnering to work on a marketing strategy that Access Dance Company can use year over year to promote different events. With this project, we're not only looking for 4 fellows to join, but we're also looking for a project lead to manage this project and partner closely with Access Dance Company's staff. So if you're excited about giving back to your community in a meaningful way, you should join YCore and definitely consider applying for the Access Dance Company project.
Hey everyone, my name's Alec and I work at Masterclass as a part of the business operations team. But outside of that, I've done a lot of work with nonprofit organizations since I was an undergrad, and I'm really excited about the opportunity to be a PL with YCore this summer. The organization that I'll be leading and working with is called Dev Mission, which provides STEM education for young adults in order to help them kind of get tech jobs that they might not have otherwise. And the scope of the work we'll be doing is taking advantage and using a lot of the data that they have available to do a better job evaluating the success and efficacy of their program to see how we can kind of iterate and improve that. And in terms of what I'm looking for a team, it's 2 things. 1, a passion for education, and 2, a desire to work with a team and collaborate together. And I'm looking forward to meeting you all and working with you in the future.
Hi, I'm Elisa. I work at Facebook on the employment brand team. I run the business operations there. A fun fact about me is I majored in economics and minored in art, so 2 very different things, but I love using both sides of the brain. I'm going to be partnering with Because Justice Matters. They're an organization in the Tenderloin. They build programs for young girls, females, women, families in the Tenderloin to really support and give them opportunities for a brighter future. I'm really excited about them because they really do invest in relationships with these women. And so we're going to be building out a social media strategy for them to increase volunteers, to increase donors, and have some fun. So I'm looking for anyone with social media expertise. You don't have to have it, but looking for people who are excited, ready to learn, passionate, and ready to run with this thing.
Hi, my name is Glenn Borak, and I work at LinkedIn as a business operations associate. One thing that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I love to write, and recently finished writing a first draft of my first novel. This summer, I'll be working with Community Music Center of San Francisco, the oldest community arts organization in the city. I'm super excited to be leading this project because I believe in the importance of the arts to bridge cultures and bring people together. I've seen it firsthand, and I'm incredibly excited to help CMC build out their online learning strategy. For this project, we'll be working on building out the organization's growth strategy into online learning. For this, we'll need fellows with research skills, critical thinking and analytical ability, and project management. If this sounds interesting to you, please come talk to me after the event to find out more. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Nabila Parvez. I am a sales engineer and product specialist by day. Fun thing about me, I've been living with my boyfriend during quarantine. He started a new hobby of hiding my phone and leaving notes with riddles for me to find them. I'm going to be working with Leah's Pantry, an organization that focuses on food access and food insecurity in San Francisco and nationwide, a much bigger issue in the context of this pandemic. We're going to work with them to transition their in-person training programs into a virtual environment. We are looking for fellows who have experience with virtual education, running a virtual curriculum, or has done a train the trainer model of education before. So if you've worked for a company that does virtual education like Chegg or Khan Academy, if you've done adult learning courses and helped run them, if you're a manager that's gotten a distributed team ramped up, we would love to work with you.
Hey guys. My name is Rosanna, but you can call me Ro. My day job is working for YouTube as a member of the strategy team, and a fun fact about me is that I'm learning how to surf. I'm thrilled this cycle to be working with Latinos Contra Cancer on developing a training module for patients who are often undocumented or who might not speak English to self-advocate to get the best care possible. And so I'm looking for folks who have experience working with diverse communities, who are jazzed about social impact, and who are rolling in empathy. Can't wait to meet you.
Hey y'all, Katie here again to tell you about an awesome project with an organization called First Graduate. First Grad is an SF organization that helps people become the first in their family to graduate from college, ready to pursue meaningful careers. This will be the third time we're partnering with First Grad, and we're so excited to continue the partnership, this time focusing on answering the question, how does First Grad engage the alumni of their program so that they can continue to support them post-college graduation, as well as engage them to help out current students? So if you're excited about college access, we'd love for you to apply. And also, it's really exciting because we're not only looking for 4 fellows to staff the project, we're also looking for a project lead to manage the project and partner closely with First Graduate's program director.
Yay! Thank you all for sitting with us. Hopefully some of those projects got you excited and jazzed up. And thank you to Liana on our alumni board who put that video together for us, as well as all the PLs who recorded their little snippets. So wanted to leave you with one more quote from an alum of ours. You've heard from our panelists today, you've heard from our project leads, and truly I hope that we can take away this nugget that we can do a lot. Now this says millennials. We are now working with millennial and Gen Z because Gen Z is in the workforce. But for all of us who are early in our careers, there is so much that we can do. And what we are working towards at YCore is making that possible, making those connections, building out that infrastructure so that you can start to have an impact in your community. So I mentioned that we have the opportunity for you to speak with our project leads. So again, application information is here. It'll be emailed to you as well as an attendee. Our deadline is May 17th. So please do get your application in before then. We are going to be responsive at our email address until then, and you're welcome to find us on social media. But we have a really exciting opportunity for you to connect with our project leads and get a little bit more of an understanding of where they're at. This is a great way to learn a little bit more about the projects before you apply. So we have put together 5 small Zooms for you to connect with our project leads and with our YCore staff. So if you have questions about YCore in general as a fellowship, you are very welcome to stay here in this main room. That's where I will be. I will be answering questions about the fellowship as a whole. If you are interested in being a project lead or on working on either the First Graduate or the Access Dance Company project, please go to room 1. Room 2, well, you can see all of the projects listed here. They're also going to be sent, they were also just sent into the chat. There's a PDF document that has all of the links to go directly into the rooms. These rooms will be open until 8. We actually have plenty of time. So you are more than welcome to pop from one to the other if you have a couple of different projects that you'd like to connect with. So please feel free to do that now. Our project leads will be going into their rooms as well. But also you are welcome to stay here. Great. And as folks are going into their rooms, I'm going to answer a question up above that Kim sent in, although it looks like Kim may no longer be here, so I apologize, Kim, about what virtual YCore projects look like. So basically, the assumption that all of our projects are going to be virtual is absolutely correct. But in terms of what conscious volunteering looks like virtually, we really focus on having all of our projects lead with a close partner relationship and with empathy and focus on that partnership over the specific deliverables. So we do really focus on deliverables, but our model is very responsive, very connected, and that nothing about that will change. So as we move forward into this virtual world with YCore, we are still really heavily prioritizing the partner relationship, that partner point of contact, and making sure that you and your team are connected to what those needs are, even as they are changing over time. So hopefully that answers the question about how we're thinking about being conscious volunteers, even in a virtual environment. Yes, so another great question. So we are partnering with Fresh Approach this summer. That is going to be part of our Peninsula program. So if you're interested in Fresh Approach, there is more information on our website about that, and then we'll be featuring that project tomorrow at our Peninsula info session. In terms of the $1,500 fundraising commitment, that is a fundraising commitment to YCore. So that funds a lot of our operations, that funds our staff, that keeps our lights on. We often will have fellows and teams that will fundraise both for YCore and for their partner organization, and we love it when that happens because we really, really want to support our partners, but that commitment is indeed to our organization. Thank you, Selena. I hope I pronounced your name right. I hope we'll get an application from you. Ooh, great question. What does YCore do for fun as a whole group? So we're still trying to figure out what we do virtually. We often, prior to this whole world, we would love to do retreats as a group and go outside. We are now thinking a lot about how we can play games and bond and connect. What do we do for fun? We actually do a lot of scavenger hunts. That has been a big thing that has happened in the past couple of years, is a lot of scavenger hunts that help us connect with each other, connect with our communities. We love a good, silly check-in question these days. But we definitely try to prioritize the connection and the fun part as much as possible, even when we're all sitting behind computer screens. Looks like somebody was not able to get into the breakout room. So they are, the password should be YCore, yes, as Katie mentioned. So if it's a password issue, make sure it's YCore with a capital Y and C. And if that doesn't work, let us know. Yes, we can definitely repost the links. They also, if you are able to access the PDF, they should be in there. So we actually have a question about the location requirements as well. So typically during a non-virtual time, we do require that fellows be as near to their cohort as possible. So our workshops in San Francisco, when they are in person, take place in kind of the FIDA area, and our workshops in the peninsula take place somewhere, the location changes a little bit, but generally kind of Redwood City or Palo Alto. Right now, we are still prioritizing local engagement, but if you really want to be a part of a project and you are not physically in those locations, please feel free to still apply, because we're still figuring out what the virtual cohorts look like. And we are prioritizing people who are engaged and excited and feel connected to the projects and to the Bay Area. So if you have some questions around that specifically, feel free to let us know. But also apply for the projects that get you the most fired up, and we'll work with them to make it work. Ooh, a great question here about how alumni are involved with projects. So we have a lot of absolutely incredible alums who stay very closely involved with YCore. The two primary roles that they can take are to join our alumni board or to be a project mentor. So our alumni board is a year-long commitment, and they work with us on all kinds of really exciting strategic projects. They do a lot of the groundwork. They helped us recruit for this event today. And then they also help us with things like research and partner relationship management. They do a lot of the behind the scenes work that keeps YCore alive and running while the 3 full-time staff members are working with the cohorts. And they're incredible. And they're some of the most fun and interesting and engaged people I've ever met. The mentors work directly with projects. So each project is assigned an alumni mentor. The mentors are a resource for project leads and project teams to help them troubleshoot, to help them figure out how to communicate things to their partners or to staff. And they are, again, a really excellent, diverse, engaged group of people who bring perspective and expertise to all of these projects that we as staff are so fortunate to have to be able to bounce ideas off of. In terms of other ways that our alumni stay engaged, we have a number of kind of small events over the course of the year. We have some volunteer events, we have some social gatherings. We also have things like small group fundraisers for YCore that are usually really fun trivia. Right now they're all online. We have some opportunities for alumni to stay engaged with small group discussions. So we do periodic coffee chats. So we have a number of different one-off opportunities. We also communicate, we share volunteer opportunities with all of our alumni. So there's an open channel for all YCore alumni to know what all of YCore's partners' needs are. So there's a really clear way for folks to stay engaged with the nonprofit community if they want to. So our workshops take place every other Wednesday. It's bi-weekly in San Francisco, and in the peninsula it's on Thursdays. And they are roughly 2 hours long in the evenings. When things are back to normal, when we're in person, those are typically 7 to 9 p.m. They're a little bit earlier now because nobody has to commute. We are hoping that we'll be able to go back to that schedule. It usually takes place somewhere in downtown San Francisco, so kind of in the FIDE area where we usually meet. There is the age bracket that we generally fall in is kind of 23 to 35. Again, we're always willing to work with people depending on where they're at, but a lot of our curriculum is focused on early career relationship to social impact. So it's most appropriate for folks who are in that age range. Thank you, Evan. It's good to see you.
Hello?
Yes, hello. No, so the rest of this time is for Q&A or for people to jump into other chats. So the official program is over. We're just kind of hanging out to answer some questions. So if you have no questions, you are welcome to get back to your evening. And we hope we'll see your application soon.